work should not, cannot, and will not be stopped.
Amen. Amen. Tonight's assembly is about public health and public safety. On that note, for those of you who are here with us in person tonight, please keep your masks on throughout the entirety of tonight, and please maintain social distancing, especially in the halls. There are 3 bathrooms that you saw when you first came in. Those are all reserved as now single-use bathrooms. Please maintain some distancing if there are others there. We know you are always excited to see each other when you come to these assemblies. If you want to kibitz, especially in large groups, please don't do so in the hallway. Please do so under the portico. We know it's raining, but at least we'll stay a little dry out there. Thank you for doing that for everyone's safety. For those who are joining us over Zoom, we welcome you as well. We see you. You are here with us, and we are so glad that you are here. Reverend Horace Huff from First Baptist Church of Milford is with us over Zoom and is hosting the Zoom part of our meeting. Reverend Huff, welcome. Will you set our Zoom norms for us?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hello to everyone. It's good to see you out there. We just want to establish how we're going to operate in this hybrid world. So to everyone at Congregation Mishkan Israel, again, my name is Reverend Huff. I am glad to be here at Connect's first ever hybrid assembly. My Zoom people, we are currently projected on the big screen at Congregation Mishkan Israel. I saw it last night and it's a little intimidating, but no, everybody can see you. So we can see Connect leaders in person and they can see us, even though we are all in different places. So my friends on Zoom, please give a big wave to all of our friends in person. We are organized people showing up to make change happen. We currently have 123 people signed into Zoom, and I see many Zoom boxes with multiple faces. So Zoom family, here are our norms. To make tonight interactive, please keep your cameras on. When you hear something that resonates with you, use your Zoom emojis to share your praise, to type your affirmation in the chat. And in the chat, you will also find the agenda for tonight, as well as a scorecard so that we can keep track of candidates' responses. Finally, I'd like to introduce our virtual timekeeper, Beth Stenger of Congregation Mishkan Israel. Connect aims to begin on time and we end on time, and Beth will hold us accountable to that. So for all of you Zoom speakers, if you hear a bell ringing, that means your time is up. Thank you so much. Actually, can you hit that one more time so everybody can hear it? There we go. Thank you so much, Reverend Andal, Rabbi Emmerman. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Huff. We are indeed a people of power. And you all have heard me say it time and time again in my role as treasurer, what power is. Let me say it again. We at Connect believe that organized people plus organized money equals power. If you're online, go ahead and help me preach tonight. Put it in the chat. But if you're in person, look at your neighbor, but keep your mask on and say, neighbor. Come on, put your Baptist preacher voice on. Say, neighbor, oh neighbor, organized people plus organized money equals power. And as an organization that requires dues from its members, we as Connect really do put our money where our mouths are to create our mind. So we not only have 123 people on Zoom, and I'm going to preach or estimate 100 people in the room tonight, we in total have 37 congregations representing over 30,000 people in New Haven and Fairfield counties who collectively raise over $100,000 in dues annually. But we do all of this not so that we can tout all of these wonderful statistics. We do this because at our core, we are not only a people of power, but we are a people of faith fueled by our traditions to make our communities a more just place. So to that end, I'm pleased to welcome now seminarian Andres Galliano, who is joining us via Zoom, who will now lead us in our opening prayer.
Thank you. Let us bow our heads and place ourselves in the loving presence of God. God of justice and of love, we come to you this evening with much to be thankful for. We thank you for the continued blessings that you bestow upon each and every one of us. We ask that our hearts and minds be opened up this evening as we seek to work together to make our world and our local community a better and loving place. A world where the weak are protected and none go hungry or poor. A world where the riches of creation are shared and everyone can enjoy them. A world where different races and cultures live in harmony and mutual respect. A world where peace is built with justice and justice is guided by love. Please open our hearts and the hearts of all those in our communities that we may come to love and care for each other with much more fervor. May God bless us all.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Galliano. Here at Connect, we believe in the importance of giving and receiving recognition. So please join me now in recognizing the Greater New Haven member institutions who have made this evening possible. When you hear your institution, when you hear your congregation or institution called, please wave your hand or use your emojis. We love the confetti emoji or the hand emoji so that we know that you are here. We are welcoming A New Beginning Recovery Homes, Christ Chapel New Testament Church, Community Baptist Church, Congregation Mishkan Israel, First Baptist Church of Milford, Friends of Connect Action Caucus, New Haven Friends Meeting, Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Parish, Shalom United Church of Christ, Spring Glen Church, Temple Emmanuel, and the Unitarian Society of New Haven. Welcome. Let's all have a big round of applause. And we see you, those who are clapping on Zoom as well. To keep us on time, I would like to invite our in-person timekeeper, Lurlane DeVos from the Unitarian Society of New Haven, to stand. Connect leaders, including Reverend Andal and me, as well as our elected officials, know exactly how much time we have to speak. We timed ourselves to the second. When there are 30 seconds remaining in your allotted time, and when your time is up, Lurleen will signal. It is not our intention to interrupt anyone. We certainly want to hear what each speaker has to say. However, out of respect for everyone's time, we will cue all of our speakers to wrap up as needed.
So let me say it again, Connect family. We are here tonight to address the issues of top concern to our congregations in New Haven and Hampden, which are public health and public safety. And when we say public health, we mean that our elected officials must address asthma, which disproportionately affects Black and brown families in New Haven and across our state, which makes it harder for our people, our children, to breathe. Let's be clear, Connect. When we say public health, we mean that our elected officials must protect and preserve public open space in all communities so that everyone can breathe fresh, safe air and stretch their legs. Let's be clear again. When we say public health, we mean that our mental and emotional well-being is of the utmost importance, and that trauma and mental health services must be made available and accessible to all residents, especially those who experience the daily trauma of living in a nation and a state that is systemically racist. When we say public health, we mean that people need a home, a place to lay their heads that is free from contamination and all other hazards.
When we say public safety, we mean that our roads should be safe for drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians alike, not only in East Rock. We mean that streets should be well maintained in every neighborhood. Crosswalks and stop signs should be visible so that families can play outside and cross the street safely. When we say public safety, we mean that our elected officials must demand and implement immediate reforms to policing, because police brutality is not public safety. Over-policing with under-protection, as is so often the reality in Black and Latinx communities, is not public safety. When we say public safety, we mean that our elected officials must urgently and comprehensively address gun violence. In New Haven and Southern Hampden in 2021 alone, 23 souls have been lost. Their names matter, their lives matter, so I invite you to take 23 seconds as we share their names on our screen. All of their loved ones are grieving, and our elected officials must act so that not one more life is lost to gun violence. We all deserve safe.
So Connect family, we are here tonight to demand public health and safety for every resident of Hampden and for every resident of New Haven. We are here to insist that our elected officials do more in collaboration with faith and community leaders to protect the health and safety of everyone they serve, because we all deserve to be healthy and we all deserve to be safe. So let's now welcome the candidates who are joining us tonight for our assembly. From New Haven, we welcome our mayor, Mayor Justin Elicker. Mayor Elicker, hello and welcome.
And from Hampden, where I reside, we welcome the mayoral primary candidates who will appear on the September 14th ballot. Mayor Curt Leng, Peter Sear, and Lauren Garrett. Welcome to all of you. As there are 3 candidates from Hampden, the order in which each person will answer the questions has been randomized and randomly selected. And we'll begin tonight's agenda with New Haven, followed by Hampden. Along with your agenda, you should each have a scorecard. Let's see those scorecards. In order for you to keep track of the responses of our candidates, give to each of the issues. Our intention is to be relational in order to build positive working relationships with each candidate. And to do so, we have prepared each candidate in advance by sharing with them and their campaign staff the specific questions that we will be asking. I know it's not a lot of time, but each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. And we ask that each of you include an explicit yes or no in your response to our commitment questions. If you do not include an explicit yes or no, Reverend Andal and I, and I'm trying to channel my inner Baptist preacher,
All right.
we'll press for an explicit yes or no. Remember, our members both on Zoom and here in the room are keeping score. All right, on Zoom, does everybody have your scorecards ready? Let's see some hands and emojis. Oh, come on, let's see some hands. Throw your hands in the air. Say, we're ready. Everybody here in person, do you have your scorecards ready? Let's see those hands. Reverend Andal, we are ready. Mayor Elicker, Veronica, and Tanisha, please join us here on the stage.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Emmerman. We will now hear about our first issue of asthma from in person by Miss Veronica Douglas-Given and virtually from Miss Sheena Drummond. Let's give them a warm Connect welcome.
Good. My name is Veronica Douglas-Given, and I was born, raised, and educated in New Haven, Connecticut. I am the baby girl with 3 brothers. That's 4 bosses, including my dad. And I watched my 3rd brother gasp for air as he was playing, as he was running. And as I was thinking about this story coming here, I said, well, will they care? See, because as a journalist, I often ask people, what is your it? What is your it? What compels you to get out there and volunteer? What is that it for you? But when I thought about the fact of the work of CONECT and how we connect churches from throughout the state, believers, then I don't need to give you any shenanigans. I need to let you know that we're standing in the gap of more than 3,000 children living with asthma, and my son is one of them. Why is he here like a ninja today? Not because it's Halloween, because when he sits in the classroom at Worthington Hooker School, this is how he told me he feels. Like he can't breathe, all locked in. And this is how children are feeling. So we need you to understand that we need healthcare workers in the schools. In fact, the CDC says that we should have 3 people in the school who are trained, who know how to give a nebulizer shot. So Mayor Elicker, I'm asking you, sir, to make sure that we have these people in the schools so that the children can breathe and so that they feel comfortable in their own skin. Because this is not comfortable. This is comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Veronica. We now welcome virtually Ms. Sheena Drummond.
Hi, my name is Tanisha Drummond. I'm a community leader with the Waverly Townhouses and the Unitarian Society of New Haven. My foster daughter, Lyric, has chronic asthma. She actually is my great niece and has been with me since she was 3 years old. She has been battling asthma since day one. Lyric is very hyper. She loves to play and run, but sometimes she has to stop so that she doesn't have an asthma attack. I'm asthmatic as well, so I know how she feels. Lyric has to bring a pump with her everywhere she goes because her allergies get the best of her every single day. She takes Claritin daily, and I give her an asthma pump every night before she goes to bed because she struggles to breathe. Last week, Lyric started first grade. She only has one spacer, and the school told me that she needs another, one to keep at school and one to keep at home. I called the doctor to get a prescription for a second spacer. I'm not even sure if insurance is going to cover it. I'm having a child with asthma. There's not much to navigate. The spacer, the pump, the asthma action plan, coordination with the teachers, the nurses, and the doctors, and the consistent worries. What if she can't breathe? I think of thousands, literally thousands of students in the New Haven public school who can't breathe. How families with good pediatricians or families without insurance? School-based community health workers would provide that support so both students and families can breathe easy, knowing that their child is safe at school. Mayor Elicker, will you commit to allocate $2 million of the American Rescue Fund to community health workers to support the New Haven public school students struggling with asthma? Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I know you're really going to push me for no and yes answers, and that some of these answers are going to be really hard for me to do that. The short answer is I can't give you an answer yet. We are going through a community process specific to the American Rescue Plan funds to determine the allocation. If you want a solid answer, I would say no, because we have school nurses, and we will continue to ensure that we have school nurses in every school. We work closely with our federally qualified health centers to ensure that health access. We're working to ensure that New Haven children have the health support that they need. And the problem with asthma is not just in our schools, but it is about making more walkable neighborhoods, having fewer parking garages, having more walkable and bikeable neighborhoods, and more infrastructure that supports those. We're also working to ensure that there's more support for young people with lead poisoning, And for the first time in many years, I'm seeing my stop, our city has implemented a very comprehensive initiative to raise the bar for lead as well.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. We'll now hear issue number 2 about Fairhaven safety, both in person from Ms. Meg Heyer and Mr. Jose Astorba. Mayor Elicker, you may remain at the center of the pulpit.
Good evening. My name is Jose Astorba. I am leader for Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church in CONECT. I have lived in the Fairhaven neighborhood for 20 years with my wife and 4 sons, age 20, 15, 13, and 5. My youngest just started kindergarten. 2 of 10. It feels like the Fairhaven neighborhood is the forgotten stepchild from New Haven, where those services are slow and improvements and investments are rare. This lack of attention, investment means the area is run down and less safe for all of us. The corner where I live, Blatchley and Pine, is a good example. Despite our numbers, dangerous accidents, where cars have been crashing over people's homes, nothing has changed. No speed bumps, no stop links, no flashing stop signs, nothing. Thank God, no one in my family and none of my neighbors were standing in that corner when those accidents happening. Someone easily could have been killed. Some other corners, people have been killed. And even there, nothing has changed. Where it seems like that city don't care about our streets and our safety. It only feels into our community, literally lowering and committing more crimes, making us less safe. The new census numbers just come out. They show the Latino group is the biggest group in New Haven now at 21%. As a leader,
Time.
at the biggest church in New Haven, at the biggest neighborhood in New Haven, I'm here to say it's enough. We need fair share in city investments, improvements to become safer for our families and children, for all our businesses and schools and institutions to thrive.
Thank you.
My name is Meg Heyer. I'm a member of Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish and a member of CONECT. We did a survey from James Street to Front Street between Chapel and Lombard. We identified 85 major improvements that must be made. Some highlights: 35 intersections without crosswalks and stop lines, 25 intersections where faded lines and crosswalks need repainting, at least 7 intersections that need some combination of speed tables, stop signs, and strobe light crosswalks to deter reckless driving. Streets are equally dangerous. For example, Blatchley between Chapel and Grand measures 0.3 of a mile and doesn't have a single stop sign, stoplight, crosswalk, or speed bump. Blatchley is more like a racetrack than a city street. Finally, every single one of our schools lacks up-to-date school zone protections. City neglect of Fairhaven infrastructure puts lives at risk right now. All of these problems are easily fixable. With mayoral leadership, this critical investment can be completely implemented in Fairhaven. Mayor Elicker, Will you commit to working with us to see that at least 75% of the 85 repairs and improvements that we have identified are completed during your next term as mayor?
I have not seen the list, so I will commit to working with you, but I cannot commit to putting city infrastructure investments into a list I haven't seen. I hear, as I walk around in every neighborhood in the city, a story of the city's neglected my neighborhood. And I can tell you, my daughter goes to school in Fairhaven. I have walked the streets of Fairhaven. I've been mayor for a year and a half, and we don't treat any neighborhood differently. We don't discriminate against any neighborhood. We prioritize neighborhoods that have historically not received the resource that they need. You've talked specifically about public safety. We've increased walking beats and bicycle beats in Fairhaven and many other cities, many other neighborhoods in the city. We've put in new speed humps, and we have a plan to do a major infrastructure improvement on Grand Avenue, Ferry, and Blatchley. We're putting in new speed humps on Front Street, and I absolutely will work with you. Some of those things like repainting crosswalks, those sound pretty easy. A lot of these need a larger community process because we need community engagement, not from the folks that are just in this room, but other residents who live on these streets to make sure that whatever infrastructure improvements we implement, we have consensus that they're the right improvements. I'm on the streets. I am very open to engaging with people and very open to working with you. And I hope that you can share that list tonight with me and we can start that process.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. We did email your campaign manager a week ago this list, and we look forward to you reviewing that and getting back with us once you have reviewed that. But right now, we'll have to put you down, of course, as a no, but thank you.
Thank you. But I would also just reemphasize that even if I had the list, I can't just commit to that. The city prioritizes a community process. We gather with neighbors on the streets and walk through them to talk about traffic calming. So it's not something that I as mayor, and you should want this. You should want that we proactively engage with the community. It's not something that I can just decide we do.
Thank you. That's what we're trying to do here tonight. Issue number 3 is now coming with public safety and gun violence prevention, both from our virtual audience with Pastor John Lewis and Minister Kadri Harris.
Hi, my name is Pastor John Levi Lewis of Christ Chapel New Testament Church, formerly known now as Christ New Testament Church. I'm also the outreach chair of the New Haven Clergy Association. I pastor the church I grew up in, and my mother still attends this church. It used to be a safe place where the congregants could come and feel safe. Now it's not always safe place to worship. There have been shootings in front of the church and behind the church. People have found bullet holes in their cars. People come to church to feel safe physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Now that safe environment is threatened by gun violence. Members of my congregation have lost loved ones. A mother, one of the ushers lost a grandchild to gun violence. I've done many funerals here at the church as a result of gun violence. The reality is something needs to be done to ensure that we are safe. Ending gun violence would not be easy. I know it would take a village. It will require collaboration between churches and organizations and the mayor's office especially. I'm ready. My church is ready. Our voices must be heard. And at this time, I'm going to turn this over to Minister Harris.
Hi, my name is Minister Kadri Harris, and I am a leader with Community Baptist Church. As Pastor Lewis said, the challenge of gun violence is complex, and we must address the root causes of community violence. Thank you, Mayor Elicker, for initiating the Department of Community Resilience and Community Crisis Response Team. These programs have the potential to address the related issues of mental health, gun violence prevention, and police brutality. But for these programs to be successful, we need transparency. People are being killed. New Haveners must be updated about the status of these programs. Otherwise, we are left just anxiously waiting. For these programs to be successful, we need data. There must be an evaluation plan to achieve the sustained funding and the long-term impact. For these programs to be successful, we need community input. The people closest to the problem are closest to the solution. They must be consulted. Programs succeed and fail depending on how they are implemented. Mayor Elicker, the question is, will you commit to facilitating public monthly sessions to provide updates on the status of the Department of Community Resilience and Community Crisis Response Team and seek community input? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Again, a very specific question. I will commit to a public process and continued engagement. There has been a public hearing that the community was welcome to participate in. We had a lot of good feedback about the creation of this department. We are about to launch with the crisis response team, which is one of the departments under this larger department, a very involved community engagement process. I hope people participate. My cell phone's 203-500-2969 if people want more information or want to engage with me. This department covers multiple different departments: homelessness, reentry, crisis response, mental health support. And each of those initiatives has a different community engagement process. For example, in homelessness, we have the Homeless Advisory Commission that meets on a regular basis. That's an opportunity for the public to engage with this process. And there, with every one of these are many different opportunities to engage in this public process. I do Mayor's Night Outs and meet the mayor out in the community where people can engage with me. Dr. Dalal, who leads this program, is also very open to engagement, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you so much, Mayor Elicker. This concludes the New Haven portion of tonight's event. We invite you to take a break on the front row, and we'll invite you back up for our New Haven and Hampden combination question. But thank you again, Mayor Elicker. Let's thank Mayor Elicker. And now let's welcome our Hampden candidates to the stage, along with Miss Elizabeth Hayes and Curt Johnson, Mayor Curt Leng, Mr. Peter Sear, and Lauren Garrett. Miss Lauren Garrett.
Welcome. It is so wonderful to have all three of you on stage. And as you can see, we have some microphones for you. Our first issue is going to be around environmental justice, and we are going to invite Curt Johnson and Elizabeth Hayes to speak.
Thank you all. I welcome the candidates to come up and take a look at the image because we're going to have a little tour, which I think we're going to get started right now. And you probably have never seen the 102-acre forest and pond section that you're going to see in a minute, because even though you all live very close by, everybody in this room does. Why? It's because the Olin Corporation and its corporate predecessor, Winchester Arms, contaminated it with industrial waste. It's been fenced off to the adjacent Newhall community for at least 5 decades and still not entirely cleaned up. The vision tonight that CONECT has and a growing Six Lakes Coalition is to clean up this contamination and transform this emerald forest into Six Lakes Park and Nature Preserve. Sorry, you all haven't seen it yet. I guess it's coming up now. What are the health benefits of this transformation? Number one, the forest serves as an air filter to those suffering from asthma from the surrounding Hampden neighborhoods. Forests purify air. Number two, the forests serve as a water filter to the ponds you will see if we ever get this up on the screen. Sorry about that, y'all. These ponds flow into Lake Whitney Reservoir. Everyone here drinks Lake Whitney public water. The forests purify the water that you will drink tonight and the water that you will drink all year long. Number three, Newhall, Whitneyville, and Spring Glen have no major parks. We need you all and the Newhall community to design the trails and picnic grounds that are desired in the quiet woods and by the pond. A park that welcomes every family, whether black, brown, or white, to recreate and exercise, walk, and enjoy clean air. So I welcome you to continue to look at the images while my friend Elizabeth Hayes comes up and chats with you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Hayes. I am a Newhall leader and organizer. I'm here to speak about environmental justice. But first, we must understand environmental injustice. For decades, Newhall has suffered from toxic contamination. It has affected our soil, it has affected the foundation of our homes, and it has affected our property values. The Newhall community has been resilient. I partnered and cajoled with your mayoral predecessors and the state to remediate the neighborhood. The cleanup and repairs are ongoing. It's a good start. This wonderful 102-acre forest and pond area we call Six Lakes, which neighbors Newhall, has been closed off and contaminated for the last 5 decades. As a member of the Hampden DTC, a Newhall organizer and leader, I believe that the next mayor of Hampden must work with us to co-create a park and nature preserve. They must push our state delegation to prioritize funding to make our shared vision of Six Lakes a reality. Every morning, I walk along the Farmington Canal Trail. I pass people every day, walking, biking, running. I am not sure what brings them there. Physical health, spiritual health, physiological, and emotional health. I know that Six Lakes has the potential to offer the Hampden community and specifically Newhall those same gifts. Will you commit to working alongside CONECT and community advocates and deep to pressure Olin Corporation to remediate and preserve Six Lakes?
Thank you so much. To begin our responses, we're going to invite Peter Sear. Mr. Sear.
So thank you for this question. I have been canvassing a lot and talking about this issue. You'd be so surprised how many people do not know that there's a 100-acre forest in the middle of our town. I am committed to preserving this forest as the lungs of our neighborhood. I'm averse to developing here. I think this needs to be a forest and a full forest with the blight on ash trees, among other things. We're cutting down a lot of trees, and I think Olin needs to be preserved. I'm in favor of the two-step approach that was put forth by the Yale School of Forestry. We can deal with the heavily contaminated site separately from the safe parts. So we need to put a good testing plan in first to make sure it's safe, but we need to get this open. I'm not so convinced that we need to involve Olin Corporation. I would actually move to get them out of the picture. I think they have been slowing things down. Yes, we can try to get pressure on them, but their only incentive is to drag their feet. And if they keep dragging their feet, I'm more interested in getting this park open and getting it used and starting the process. So I'd like to put an acquisition team together and execute this plan. And I'm fully committed to working with CONECT and all the partners that have been involved in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sear. Ms. Garrett.
All right, thank you to CONECT for providing this forum and inviting me. It's good to see you all. Yes, I am passionate about environmental justice, and I believe there is a lot that we can do at the town level to address it. The issue at the Olin Powder Farm is already part of my detailed platform, which voters can see at laurenforhamden.com. In my capacity as the chair of the Issues Committee for the Democratic Town Committee, I helped incorporate the following language into our town-wide platform, and it is one of my goals when I become mayor. Here's the language. We demand that the state of Connecticut Deep require cleanup by the Olin Corporation of the Olin Powder Farm. Hampden should work in cooperation with nonprofits and state agencies to see this through. I have already taken this public position on the environmental justice issues, and I'm happy to do so again so that voters know where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Mr. Leng.
Thank you, Pastor Jack. Good evening, and thank you for hosting this. The answer to this one is a very clear yes. And we've actually started working already with the Six Lakes Committee and with our environmental legal team to start to get this ball rolling. You're gonna have to have a lot of serious funding in order to do the remediation and to keep this open. And I have to point to Mrs. Hayes, who's been an incredible advocate, to Kurt Johnson, Save the Sound, and to Councilor Farmer, who's been a leader in making sure that we're paying attention to this issue. We have an opportunity that's really a once-in-a-generation opportunity in a densely populated area from Whitneyville to Highwood to the Newhall Street area and more, to have an open space like no other. Usually everything's already developed, right? And that's only 2 blocks away from the Volano Park and Rochford Field area that we spent a lot of time over the last, let's say, is what, 15 years, 20 years? Thereabout. Yeah. Getting money and working to remediate. And now it's a beautiful park and really one of the stablest areas of the community. So the answer is yes.
Thank you all. Now we're going to move on to our next topic, which is affordable housing. We're going to invite Marissa Dion Mead via Zoom and Phil Kent in person to talk more about affordable housing here in Hampden.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Marissa Dion Mead, and I'm a founding member of Spring Forward. We're a community action group. Spring Forward was founded in recognition of the segregation and housing inequity that exists all across Connecticut, in Hampden, and specifically in Spring Glen, the neighborhood where we live. Our mission includes promoting the development of a variety of housing types and advocating for zoning reform, especially where current zoning codes uphold the patterns established by the explicitly racist housing practices of the mid-20th century. Neighborhoods like Spring Glen impose zoning regulations that reinforce segregation by excluding housing types other than single family and requiring large minimum sizes for new lots and homes. At the same time, small areas of town are overburdened by large housing developments that can often be isolated from resources and opportunities. Hampden, like many towns, needs to add naturally affordable housing and subsidized housing to meet demand. Adding these units only in areas that are already dense with housing will only contribute further to economic and racial segregation. Our suburbs, particularly neighborhoods like Spring Glen, need to do more to meet the needs of Black and Brown residents. More inclusive zoning is a vital first step. And now I will pass the virtual mic to CONECT leader and Spring Glen resident, Phil Kent.
Thank you very much. As she said, my name is Phil Kent. I'm a CONECT leader, a CMI member here, and a Spring Glen resident since 2003 with my wife and my 3 sons who grew up in Hampden. We have felt blessed to live here, and we liked it so much that when we sold our first home in 2018, we moved all of 3 blocks to another Spring Glen home. But Hampden, including Spring Glen, has a past full of racially discriminatory policies that impact all of our town's residents today. As Marissa Mead touched on, through the 1950s, Spring Glen and Whitneyville expressly prohibited the sale of homes to people of color. My wife is Hindu and Indian.
Because we're not mechanics, we start tinkering around.
I'm Jewish and white. Our children are biracial. Undoubtedly, in the not too distant past, there were those who would not have welcomed us to Spring Glen as an interracial, interreligious family. And while that does not appear to be as true today, and we have somewhat diverse neighbors, the impact of discrimination continues in Hampden. Elizabeth Hayes taught us that Newhall neighborhood suffered toxic contamination. The neighborhood was built over a marshy industrial dump and had extensive construction disruptions from environmental cleanup. It also lost a middle school. Those homes were marketed specifically to Black working class families, many of whom worked in the former Winchester munitions factory. We must address the ongoing legacy of housing inequality in Hampden so that none of our neighborhoods are redlined. We must eliminate discriminatory exclusionary zoning that perpetuates segregated neighborhoods with reduced access to public services, home ownership, education and opportunity, plus police profiling and health issues like asthma that we've heard about. And so the question tonight is, will you commit to increasing mixed-use, multifamily, and affordable housing in parts of Hampden that currently lack it, or that specifically prohibit this type of housing through exclusionary zoning codes? Thank you.
Thank you. For our first response, Mr. Leng.
Sorry for the pause on the microphone. The answer is clearly yes. Hampden zoning regulations have been restrictive. Our updated zoning laws and our updated plan of conservation and development talk about having more affordable housing or workforce housing and both. But we need to do more on the zoning end to have more affordable housing. But if you do it only with zoning, then you're hoping that someone's going to come in and build. And what I think we need to do, in addition to some of the zoning upgrades, is to be more proactive in trying to get it built. So let me give you an example. Many of you are familiar with the High Meadows property that we're trying to acquire and that we've gotten approved from the state to acquire. We're primarily marketing that for affordable senior housing. The town of Hampden actually is quite fortunate in that we have multifamily housing. Many communities that have these same and more restrictive zoning regulations don't even have 2- and 3-family houses that might be semi-affordable to live in. And this is an issue that's right on a humanistic level. It's the right thing to do, but it's also the right economics. Workforce issues are primary for getting people to invest in your community, and we have to focus on it for both the right reasons and because it's the right economic driver for the town.
Next up, we'd like to hear from Mr. Sear.
So first, thank you to Marissa and Phil. The work that Spring Forward does has really moved this conversation forward. I am absolutely committed to ushering in more affordable housing in areas like Spring Glen and Westwoods and Hampden. It's not only going to help sort of work to unravel the de jure segregation that was committed in the past, but it's also the right economics. We have overly restrictive zoning that doesn't allow us to develop in the right way. We need to be more flexible in the way we use our land. So we need both a commercial space and on top of it being residential space too. So we get the most out of our land and the most out of our economics. And if you look at the New Haven Independent actually had a really good article about this. It's the two neighborhoods that have not grown at all are Spring Glen and Westwoods. And it's specifically because we have these restrictive zoning reforms. So we need to usher in these reforms. We need to bring in housing to help combat racial segregation in our town. But it's also just the right economics. And if we want lower taxes, we need to welcome these things in. And I will say this is not scary, big developments. These are small units that can fit in our communities and aren't going to change the character of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. And for our final response, Ms. Garrett.
All right. Yes, this is another commitment that I've already made through the Democratic Town Committee's municipal platform. The DTC actually worked with Spring Forward to incorporate housing desegregation into our platform. When I become mayor, I am personally committed to changing local zoning laws. to increase access to what we have historically been mostly white neighborhoods, including by allowing accessory housing units, mixed-use buildings, conversion to duplex, and multifamily affordable housing. We must work to reverse the legacy of zoning and other practices in neighborhoods that resulted in segregated neighborhoods in our town. It's also time that we reimagine spaces like the Walgreens parking lot to make better use of available land while also enhancing the quality of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you all. For our final issue, we're going to talk about public safety, and we would like to invite Reverend Marilyn Kendricks and Pastor Jack Davidson to talk more about this.
Good evening. I'm Reverend Marilyn Kendricks from Spring Glen Church and Connect. Black Lives Matter. Am I right? But you know what? Saying those three words, putting that on your lawn sign or wearing it on a t-shirt are wonderful gestures. But we are sick and tired of gestures that are seldom followed by real action. Symbolic gestures that are presented as progress without any real change are simply not enough. We know that real change is possible. We know that people other than police can respond to 911 calls for people experiencing mental health crises, substance abuse, homelessness, and more. We know that safe de-escalation is possible. We know that police accountability is possible when police commissions hold officers accountable for safe and equitable policing. Some folks have been disheartened by the cries to defund the police, but those are the cries of people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. We need real change in how policing is done. We need that change here in Hampden. Policing without real community accountability, without consequences when abuse of power takes place is simply not enough. We need elected officials who are interested in providing real justice in our community. This is the challenge of today. With that, I will turn it over to my pastor, the Reverend Jack Davidson.
I'm Reverend Jack Perkins Davidson, senior pastor at Spring Glen Church in Hampden, but in my previous congregation, I was ministering to families from Newtown when the shooting took place at Sandy Hook Elementary School. So I know firsthand how first responders absorb immense trauma in service to others, and I value and respect that. My own cousin is a Black man who serves as a police officer here in Connecticut. I respect the risk that he takes every day when he goes to work. So in advocating against racism in policing, I am not against police officers. I am for police accountability. Campaign Zero, yeah, go ahead. Now I'm going to talk real fast to get this all in. Campaign Zero has done extensive national studies that show if one officer gets away with misconduct, then their fellow officers are 4 times more likely to engage in misconduct and 5 times more likely to shoot a civilian, which is 3 times more likely to be a Black person. That same racism in policing exists right here in Hampden and in New Haven. In April of 2019, Hampden officer Devin Eaton crossed jurisdiction lines and shot an unarmed Black couple who were singing love songs in their car. He fired 16 shots, and now more than 2 years after that shooting, Officer Eaton has not been terminated. This lack of accountability is deeply troubling and representative of a broader culture in our town. In the past 2 years, we have heard Hampden residents say that they did not trust the Hampden Police Department enough to call when a friend was stuck in an abusive relationship. We have heard New Haven residents say they feel unsafe driving through Hampden for fear of being profiled. I've heard from Black neighbors and community leaders who say they avoid the police for fear of discrimination and have experienced discrimination discrimination from the Hampden Police Department, and that when they have called the police, they've been dismissed or received no follow-up communication. In the past 2 years, officers have been caught on tape making racist threats, and while the results of their disciplinary trials remains confidential, these same officers were later publicly praised and promoted. I personally myself have witnessed an officer aggressively interrogate 2 Black teenage boys without cause who were quietly eating pizza in a local restaurant. After 2019, a diverse coalition from across communities called for reform, and all we've gotten are a toothless car pursuit policy, a boilerplate use of force policy, and a chokehold policy with a giant loophole. There have been promises made of jurisdiction memorandum between Hampden and New Haven that remained unfulfilled, a community forum series that was swiftly abandoned, and 2 police chief hires that circumvented the process of input from the public. So the question is this: will you commit to creating a non-police crisis response team to include social workers and mental health professionals that reflect Hampden's racial diversity to respond to relevant emergency calls? And will you commit to replacing the current police commission with more proportional representation from the neighborhoods most impacted by policing, and seek racially diverse appointees who will prioritize meaningful, speedy, and public accountability against both systemic and individual racism in policing?
I know that question was a very long question. I know you received it in advance. If you need me to repeat the question, I'm happy to do so. We're all looking at the question, so we don't need it repeated. Ms. Garrett, we'd like to invite you to respond first.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am committed to creating a non-police crisis response team staffed by professionals who are better equipped to respond to certain calls for service. This team will provide the best care to individuals in need while also relieving caseload pressure for law enforcement officers. When individuals are in crisis due to homelessness or untreated mental health or substance abuse disorders, mental health professionals have the skills to de-escalate the situation safely and humanely and connect people to necessary services. The proposed charter revisions would have expanded the police commission and increased diversity by including representation from every district. Unfortunately, the charter revision was voted down by Republicans working with Mayor Leng's allies on the council. When I become mayor, I will replace current police commissioners with people from neighborhoods disproportionately impacted by policing. I will ensure that our police commission serves the public and holds police accountable.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Mr. Leng.
So let's start with this. I think that the future of safety services is going to include the future of public safety, if we're going to do this right, is going to be a 24/7 response with mental health professionals and social. Right? Someone on my ticket is back, Rachel Dobin, who I think is in the audience, is someone that wants to work on that. We worked with the Yale School of Public Health to get a study done on 24/7 response. The city of New Haven is doing the same, and we've funded in our budget this year additional dollars for mental health response and social service response. That's where we have to go if we want to make everyone safer. Our staff, our community, every single person. When that call comes in and you need that public safety service, you want them to be able to dispatch the right person with the right professional background. And we're actually driving toward that in Hampden. Replacing all of Hampden's police commissioners would do a real disservice to this town. The last 2 appointments to the commission, which I'm proud to have made over the last year, are 2 extraordinary individuals, both whom live in the 3rd and 5th districts, which are in Southern Hamden, and one of which is the president of Mothers Demand Action Against Gun Violence. Just appointing people to say that the commission that's currently there is bad and taking them off is not the right thing for the town.
Thank you, Mayor Leng. I just want to double check. You're saying you will not commit to replacing the current police commission is what I'm hearing.
Not the entire commission, 24/7 mental health, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Is that non-police, to create a non-police crisis? Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, and Mr. Sear.
Yeah, so just to be very clear, I'm absolutely committed to hiring professional social workers to deal with the issues of drug addiction, mental health, and homelessness. If you talk to police officers themselves, they say that they're not equipped or trained to deal with these issues. And I would want to work regionally on this. I think Mayor Elicker has put in a good plan in place to take 10% of calls away from the police department that don't need to go there. And I think that's a good plan, and I would love to work with him on this. In terms of the police commission, I think Mayor Leng is right. We have good people serving on there that are representative of the community. I would be open to expanding the police commission to include more districts, but I'm not interested in kicking people off that are doing good work. I think the problem is that we don't use them when it comes to decision making. We did not use the police commission in the police negotiation for the new union contract. That union contract has a no layoff clause in it. That's something I'm going to work to remove in our next negotiations. And I want to work with the police commission on that to hold our police officers more accountable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you to all three of our candidates. Let's all give them a round of applause, both here and on Zoom. On behalf of Connect, we're so glad that three of you came here tonight. We're now going to invite Mayor Elicker back up on stage as we're just going to talk about a combination New Haven and Hamden question. As you know, these two cities, while they are certainly distinct and governed separately, there's just a very thin line that separates them. Many people who live in Hamden work in New Haven and vice versa, and we go back and forth all of the time. As members of congregations across Greater New Haven and Hamden, we know that there is an overwhelming overlap between these two cities. And that means sometimes that the wonderful things that happen link us together, but certainly the issues that plague us are also issues that we have to work on together. So I have one question for all four of you. We're going to start with Mr. Elicker. Is what will you do to work together across New Haven and Hamden in order to prevent crime?
Our cities are very much interlinked in so many ways. You know, we have a border in theory, but the residents that live in Newhallville don't see a line on the ground, and our crime is interlinked as well. Marquise Winfrey, who was shot and killed and was one of the names that you saw above you, was a Hampden resident and was shot in New Haven. Similarly, Tyshawn Matheny, who was shot and killed in Hampden, is a New Haven resident. We have worked very closely. In fact, Hampden is the closest relationship of any town that we have to address crime. Hampden regularly shows up at our CompStat meetings. They are regular attendees at our Intel meetings. We have recreated the shooting task force, and Hampden has detailed an individual that works on our shooting task force. I have attended meetings with community members in Hampden and the police force in Hampden, just across the border from Newhallville, to talk about how we can even tighten that relationship even more. We work very closely together and will continue to do so. One more thing is street outreach workers. Len Jihad leads a program on street outreach and does violence interruption, and we collaborate across the borders as well.
Thank you. Mr. Sear, what will you do to work together across New Haven and Hamden to prevent crime?
I think Mayor Elicker nailed it. Crime knows no borders, and especially gun violence. So I think we need a regional approach to gun violence that's centered in Project Ceasefire model. It's Oakland's model to reduce gun violence. And essentially, you know, it empowers the people that are close to the victims of violence, to organize and reach out to those who are involved in violence and try to get them jobs and services. We need to do this on a regional level because the trauma is affecting both communities. And if we can combine resources, we could have a more effective program. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett.
So every child and adult has a right to feel safe in their own community. While the rhetoric that crime is out of control, we must not let social media whip up this fear that's not based on fact. However, that doesn't mean that crime isn't something we should address. Preventing crime is most of all about addressing root causes such as unemployment, safe housing, food security, and family support. When we provide good paying jobs, affordable housing, youth programming, and treatment for mental health and substance abuse disorders, we will see crime decrease. Crime is a sign that society is failing some of its members and systemic changes are required. When I'm mayor, I'll work with Justin Elicker on economic development along Dixwell Avenue to revitalize neighborhoods and improve the local economy. I will also work with our school leadership, Hampden PD, and community organizations to show people to reach their full potential without harming others. The key to reducing harm is collaboration. If you look at my team on row A and those working to support us, you'll see that I'm a coalition builder.
Thank you. And Mr. Leng.
Got my mic taken away. We've enjoyed, and it's intentional, a very good working relationship with the city of New Haven. The city line and the town line's silly. You can throw a quarter and you'd be in the city. You can throw a quarter and you'd be in the town. We have Cherry Ann Street that's literally split down the middle, and it's half New Haven and half Hampden. Our relationships between our PDs has been really strong and has been stronger than it has in the past. The communication that Mayor Elicker mentioned has been, again, with intention. And I think it's a lot of good information to both sides. The original question was just, are you going to work together, right? Right. So obviously that's a yes. In Hampden, we've worked to increase our community police outreach. The street worker outreach program in this budget has been doubled, and we've had street worker outreach for the last 3 or 4 years. And the work has been extraordinary. That it's preventative and it's intervention that really no one else that I know of can provide. Leonard Jihad was doing that with a different organization, and when that organization folded, we didn't know where to go for that service. Thankfully, he started CTVIP, and we were able to hire him and expand his efforts this year.
Great
to talk more about.
Thank you so much. Well, you're going to have a minute to talk about whatever you want for 3 minutes. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here again. In addition to the many issues raised tonight, and we know that there are many issues facing our town that we could have addressed, many CONECT constituents in Hampden have also voiced concerns, of course, about our favorite topic to talk about, which is high property taxes. It results in many homeowners leaving the town. It deters prospective homeowners from choosing Hampden to raise their families. We encourage each of you to either address this topic or to discuss anything else that you want to tell to the constituents of Hampden prior to the election. You're going to each have 3 minutes for this section, and Mr. Leng, we invite you to begin.
So taxes. Hampden's taxes are obnoxiously high. They're obnoxiously high because we've had to put a lot of money over the last decade into things that were underfunded for a very long time. The good news is that we've hit a point where our finances are more stable than they've been in any time in recent history. Our town pension fund, which was almost broke, almost going to a pay-as-you-go model, which would have meant 5 mils more increase of taxes before you could blink, is at $200 million, and we funded it 100% of what we're supposed to for the last 2 years for the first time ever. Our town's fund balance, which went into the negative last year after a very challenging pandemic year with a challenging budget, and we've ended this year balanced with a surplus that's turning that negative into a multi-million-dollar surplus. Standard & Poor has given us a slight uptick. Our grade is not great, with our credit rating on Wall Street, but they've gone and said, you know what, we've evaluated you, and they examined from top to bottom in our rating interviews, and they've moved us from a negative to a stable. It's not perfect, but you know what? I'll take negative to stable any day of the week. We continue to work on these things. We continue to work to cut costs. Medical insurance and pension, and that's the reason that I'm talking about these boring subjects, takes up 1/3 of our town budget. Medical insurance reform that we've done has created over the last couple of years $6 million of savings in the budget. Some of that might be pandemic related, but other of those dollars is going to be from savings, from the transfer over to health savings accounts, high deductible health savings accounts, and other medical reforms for retirees. All of this is driving toward one answer, and that is our taxes are, again, obnoxiously high. However, they are now stable. I do not see any year in the near or far future where we are going to have a high increase in taxes, where we're going to have something that's unexpected that comes with taxes. And that's something that's really important for us, because I know that personal friends of mine have called me and said, come on, tell me the truth, because we're looking at buying a house in town. Are the taxes going to go up a lot? Are they going to go up next year, the next year after that? And I try to give them honest answers. 4 years ago, the taxes were going to go up because we had to meet these obligations. I think we're in a very solid space right now. Taxes is something we could talk about for hours and hours. Police is something that we should dedicate a day and have a discussion about. I think we've made a lot of forward movement with the town. I think we've been in an unprecedented time that none of us could have predicted, none of us with the pandemic. I think that Hampden's had a magnet on its back for severe weather, thankfully, with the exception of the very last one. And I'm proud of my storm management team, my emergency management team, and our public safety officials for being ready for those things all the time. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Finance Director Jackson, who's in the audience, because over the last year, his work on our town finances has been exceptional and helped us to get to that point.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Sear, if you would like to either address taxes or something else you want to make sure that your constituents know.
Yeah, so I definitely want to address taxes. It's obviously the #1 priority in our town and the #1 thing we hear about from constituents in town. I think the fundamental problem is the process with our finances. We need a process that is tied to metrics. So when we expand departments, we need reasoning behind those expansions, and we need to agree with our department heads on what they are going to be evaluated on. If we could agree on the metrics, we could agree on a process, and we could have a more transparent discussion. But right now, there's so much smoke and mirrors, it's really hard to figure out what's going on. And so I look at the broader issue, though. Yes, there is mismanagement, but the broader issue is we have a property tax paradox in Connecticut. So our #1 private employer is Quinnipiac, and every time that Quinnipiac grows, we get more and more taxable property off our rolls. And that is a failing business model in our state. It's a failing business model in our town. And I think you could directly attribute our deficit to that specific problem. The state recognized this as a problem in 1970. They made it an optional line item in the budget that they don't fund every year. To me, it's an equity issue. If you line up the most untaxable property next to the properties with the highest minority populations, you'll find that they are directly correlated. We've had great movement on this in the Senate. I know President Martin Looney has moved the ball forward in creating a tiered pilot system, but I think we need to take that a step further. We need to ask for fully funding the pilot program, and I think that's the easiest lever for us to pull as a regional community. I think we should work with our state delegation. We need to work as mayors and form a regional council on this issue, because if we solve this issue, we solve the high taxes, we'll get a consistent stream of revenue from the state, and it's really the best bet, because we're facing increased fixed costs, and that's coming up against a wall in 2025. So we're gonna hit that wall, and people are gonna be angry. They don't know what's coming. But if the state comes and holds the governor accountable and gets Governor Lamont to commit to funding these on the pilot program to live up to the equity funding that he says that he is putting in the budget, then I think that we have a chance here to stabilize the mill rate, but it's only going to be done with more state funding. We can't just do it from taxing and cutting services. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. Under the Leng tenure, taxes have gone up 25%. We have over $1.3 billion in liabilities and the most debt per capita of any municipality in the state of Connecticut. Our bond rating is one step above junk bond status. Our fund balance went negative in the most recent audit and is now being propped up with more borrowed money. We cannot trust the current administration to clean up the mess that they have created. Mayor Leng has been involved in shaping our town's financial strategy for over a decade. He has had 6 years as mayor to right the ship, and he has failed. We need a new path forward. We need to stop awarding contracts based on connections. Our contracts for service need to get sent out to bid in a competitive bid process. We need to negotiate costs for savings. We need to stop giving out excessive voluntary raises to department heads. This past year, when many companies laid off workers and faced hiring freezes, the Leng administration gave out voluntary raises, including a raise of $25,000. The good news is that Hampden has an opportunity to invest the federal American Recovery Funds into infrastructure and economic development. Unfortunately, the Leng administration has already used $6 million of the American Recovery Funds to plug holes in their budget. We need responsible, stable leadership to allocate the rest of this funding so we don't waste any more opportunities. Cuts and savings will not be enough to address our financial challenges. Economic development and a thriving local economy will improve people's lives and reduce our dependence on property taxes to manage the town finances. I have spoken with people who tried opening a business in Hampden and were ignored. For example, Counterweight, a popular Hampden business that was looking to expand, reached a dead end, so we lost them to a neighboring town. My experience on the Legislative Council showed me what is working well and what is not working well in our town. As a small business owner, I've paid off debt, grown my business, and negotiated good deals. All things we need to do in Hampden. I have a skilled and hardworking team in place to get to work on day one. As a small business owner, you can trust that I will work with other small businesses to guide them through the process of realizing their dream and growing our grand list. As a parent with 3 kids in Hampden Public Schools, I am deeply invested in all of our student outcomes. We cannot sacrifice our children's educations to clean up the financial mess that Leng has helped to create. It has been my pleasure to speak with thousands of Hampden residents over the past several months. It is clear that they are going to vote for change. Please go to laurenforhamden.com and you can learn more about my vision and become part of the change that we need in Hampden. Don't forget to vote for row A on September 14th. Thank you.
Thank you once again to all of our Hampden leaders and all of our Hampden mayoral candidates. We're getting ready to hear from our New Haven mayor, but we do want to ask Connect family, if you would extend, we are indeed a people of faith, which means we are also a people of grace. Normally we begin on time and end on time, but because of some tech challenges at the beginning of our first ever hybrid assembly, please ma'am, please sir, just give us a few extra moments tonight. But Mayor Elicker, we invite you now to come and give closing remarks. And in addition to the issues discussed here tonight for New Haven, many Connect constituents in New Haven have voiced concerns about inadequate mental health and trauma services for low-income residents in New Haven. We encourage you to address this topic as well as any other topic you would like in your closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank goodness I do not have to talk about Hampden taxes. First of all, I feel like we got off on the wrong foot with me answering no to a couple of what I felt were quite specific questions, because I think the spirit of what we all are trying to accomplish here is aligned. You know, we talk about, for example, asthma. This to me is about health, and in particular, health impacts to communities that have historically not had the resources. And whether it's COVID-19 in New Haven, we were the first around the state for many things, to issue a mask mandate, to set up a vaccination site where you could literally walk up and didn't have to use a car. We've done over 400 pop-up vaccination sites in our city. That's about health equity. Lead is another example of that, right? It's about making sure that our communities are safe. By the way, I took a look at the Fairhaven list. It was on my phone. I apologize, I didn't know it was an attachment, didn't see the attachment. There's some things we can work on there. The question for me, though, is I can't treat Fairhaven differently than New Hallville, than The Hill, than West Rock. We all deserve, and this is one of the most common things I hear around the city, traffic safety, speed humps, and we are committed to doing that throughout the city through a community engagement process. It's ensuring that our communities are safe from the plague of gun violence, and we've worked very closely across the border in Hampden, but initiating many programs that are not only about increasing policing, which is something that I think is important that we do in an accountable way, but they're about violence interruption, and most importantly, they're about providing resources for people so they don't have to resort to crime. We've opened a reentry welcome center, so every one of the over 900 people that every year come back to New Haven, every one of them, because we collaborated with the Department of Corrections, is dropped off in front of Project More on Grand Avenue, and there's a caseworker welcoming them home. It's about mental health and substance use disorder. We on the New Haven Green just yesterday gathered together our health department, regional health departments, nonprofits like Cornell Scott, the App Foundation, who implement progressive substance use disorder policies that engage with people, that don't criminalize substance use disorder, but rather treat it as a health issue. Our team, Dr. Dalal, who leads the Community Services Administration, is working very closely with experts on our Board of Health Commission, including some individuals that are nationally renowned for their knowledge around substance use disorder. We are aligned. And I want to take a moment to talk about the partnership with Hampden. Because first of all, it's personal to me. In this building, my two daughters, April and Molly, who are now 3 and 6, very much grew up in this building downstairs at Mishkan Israel's daycare. I spend time at Home Depot. I spend time at Stop and Shop. In fact, I saw a guy at Stop and Shop and said, "Aren't you the mayor?" I see my 30 seconds coming up. "Isn't there a Stop and Shop in New Haven?" And I said, "Shh." But the relationship is so deep. I talked about the partnership around violence interruption and violence prevention. But I was on the phone with Mayor Leng every day during COVID-19. We worked hand in hand around mask orders and making sure that we were shutting down and coordinating, and I think that's key. We worked together on pilot so that we could push the state to increase more funding for cities like New Haven's and Hampden's. We share our protesters. Mr. Farmer comes to our town. I have to admit, I've come to Hampden Town Hall to protest myself. We are closely interlined, and we need to work together regionally as a community to make sure, as two communities, but as one community, to make sure that we're advocating for these very issues we care about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Elicker. Won't you stay up here, Mayor Elicker, and won't the other candidates step forward in front of the screen so that we can see all of you? We have one final short and sweet commitment question to ask you all. Yes. CONECT seeks a public working relationship with you in order to proactively and collaboratively address the issues of top importance to our communities. Please keep your answer to this one question to one word, either yes or no. Will you commit to a public working relationship with CONECT? We'll start on the end, Mayor Elicker.
That's an easy one. Yes, of course.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett? Mr. Sear? And Mr. Leng?
Yes, we do, and we're getting stronger.
Thank you all so much. Help me thank our candidates once again for joining us tonight. Awesome. You may be seated. And as we end our time together tonight, we want to say thank you. Thank you to the hundreds of participants who took the time to join us tonight, both here at Congregation Mishkan Israel and virtually on Zoom. Thank you again to our candidates, Mayor Justin Elicker, Mayor Curt Leng, Mr. Peter Sear, and Ms. Lauren Garrett. Thank you to the members of our planning team who devoted their time, energy, and gifts during these summer months to make sure that this assembly would happen. And thank you too to everyone in CONECT who engaged in one-on-ones to help identify the issues that we would raise here tonight that are most important to our communities. We know that there is more work to be done, and we commit ourselves anew to making sure that that happens.
We as Connect members, we have a commitment that we make to you all as well, that we commit to working with the next mayor of New Haven and the next mayor of Hampden to progress closer to achieving public safety and public health for every single resident of New Haven and every single resident of Hampden. We are ready to put in the work because that is what our collective faith traditions command of us. In a minute, we're going to hear a closing prayer, but first, I want to remind you all that for those who are registered Democrats in the town of Hampden, you are able to vote in the mayoral primary election on September 14th. If this applies to you, please remember to cast your vote, and your vote matters. In the last primary election, only 5,257 votes were cast. If we want to show up, if we want to hold our mayors accountable, if we want to say that we are working to make a better Hampden, we need to show up and cast our votes. To all of our virtual attendees, this was our first ever hybrid action. We thank you for being a part of it. We thank you for your patience as we waded through many technical difficulties. Thank you to our phenomenal Zoom host, Reverend Horace Huff. Please share some praise for Reverend Huff in the chat right now. In a minute, we're going to hear from Reverend Linda Susan Ulrich, the pastor at Unitarian Society of New Haven. And after we do so, we invite those of you who are here in person to slowly make your way. Please give everybody some space in the hallway. Our reopening task force said that is the one area of concern in our building right now. Please give everybody some space. And again, if you want to hang out and talk with people, please do so under the portico or set up a Zoom or FaceTime for when you get home. So we're going to turn it over. Reverend Linda Susan, please close us in prayer.
Thank you all so much for being here tonight. And thank you for letting me do this closing prayer. I invite you into a spirit of prayer, meditation, or contemplation of ultimate things. Spirit of life, known by infinite names, we're grateful for your presence with us tonight and always. We're grateful for those who thirst for justice and enact it in the world, those called to serve the common good, those whose faith leads them in the ways of compassion and love. We gathered here tonight because we care deeply about one another and know that collective liberation first takes root in common ground. We gathered because we also understand that we flourish when our differences become fuel for growth. We gathered because we believe in something greater than ourselves and in the promise of profound transformation. Even in uncertain times, we need not be afraid because we are not alone. All across this state, people like us are striving for something better for our families, our neighbors, our institutions, and our planet. Even when we feel isolated, our reality is interdependence. So tonight, as we hear the downpour outside, let us also listen for the small, still voice urging us onward. As rivers rise and perhaps overwhelm their banks, let us hold tightly to our bonds of friendship and purpose. As streams flow into an unwritten future, let us remember that we live in the embrace of the love that will not let us go. Let us go forth then, friends, with courage and with kindness, and choose to be a blessing to the world. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
Amen. Thank you all for coming tonight. Please drive safely as the rain has approached. Be safe and be well.